Hey everybody, welcome to another build-centered episode of the Sims 2 Astrolegacy Challenge. This week we'll be building the Taurus-Inspired house for our 11th generation heiress, Raspberry. And for this particular build, I actually did it stream style. As you guys might see, I actually didn't think to properly set up the recording interface alongside the streaming. So unfortunately, here at the beginning, the quality of the video might be a tiny bit lower, and you're also going to see the chat baked into the video the whole time because I didn't really think about that aspect of the build footage as I was working at it. It was another one of those random unannounced streams where I'm just kind of trying to get myself used to streaming randomly without making a big to-do about it. So if you missed the stream, don't worry, there will be more. I'm always streaming on the last Saturday of every month. I'm trying to insert in a little bonus stream here and there. I think the best thing to do though would be to turn on that bell, or maybe follow me on Twitch if you do want to try and catch a stream live. I'll almost always be on the weekend. I would say hit that bell, baby, and hit the like and hit the subscribe while you're here too. Let's get started. So for the Taurus house, I spent some time at the beginning doing some research on some farmhouse style homes. I knew from the very beginning that I wanted a wraparound porch and I wanted it to be farmhouse style, but that's basically all I really knew going in. So we began by kind of carving out where on the lot I wanted the farmhouse to be, and I also kind of resolved to have an area to grow crops that we can then feed into our general store, and also have a little barn and pond, because ultimately Raspberry and her Taurus legacy and heritage is calling towards rhinestone cowgirl. That's really the aesthetic I've been calling for Taurus. Let's talk a little bit about Taurus. Taurus is fixed earth. It is a sign that is ruled by Venus. It is symbolized by the bull, and I think that some of the most common key terms whenever describing a Taurus would be stubborn, loyal, traditional, artistic, musical, sensitive, but also hardworking. Of all of the earth signs, Taurus is the one that evokes imagery of a spring field or a meadow more than any of the others. Virgo being a much more meticulous and organized, controlled sign, and Capricorn in comparison feels a lot colder and sharper, more like rock and mountain versus the warm and nurturing kind of vibe that Taurus has. And really it's this like harvest goddess, mother of the earth kind of archetype that I really think of when I, at this point in my life, think about Taurus. I think Taurus is a very stabilizing energy. It's very comforting. As a Pisces, I can really appreciate how they're a little more slow moving. They're very stable. They're very like you can count on them when they're in your life. But we agreed in the chat while we were discussing Taurus as well, that they're also like insanely stubborn and they will tell you how it is. And if you disagree, well, that's just like too bad. But that's like, honestly, in my eyes, more of a strength than a weakness. I think I'm mostly just very jealous of how sure of themselves fixed and often earth signs are. Some notable Tauruses that I think really showcase the best side of Taurus would be obviously my beloved Sabrina Carpenter, but also a lot of my favorite housewives as well.
Don't throw your jealous energy up here on stage with me. No, girlfriend. I got this.
I'm always going to be in the spotlight because I was born a star.
Read my lips. I don't owe anybody anything. Karen is debt-free and loaded. That.
Sarah from Flushing, New York said, I can't believe Candy stopped for a Chick-fil-A sandwich when she was already running late for the Savannah trip. Did you need the sandwich?
Well, I did.
Is Mercury in retrograde? Because Adam won't speak to me, hates me.
Poor Kay.
The thing he loves more than anything in the world are penguins. And so I looked into it, and at the aquarium, you can adopt a penguin. I named her Spot.
Pay attention, please.
That was totally uncalled for what she did. To pay attention, who is she? Is she God? No. So don't ever tell me to pay attention.
Thanks, love.
Kim, is that not the funniest thing?
Can we get some
seriously eating
cocktails?
a pizza up under the laser.
I need my soda before I die.
I was arrested. Prostitution whore. You were f***ing gay 19 times. You bitch. Coming to my class. You whore. A guy in my ass. You whore.
I think a lot of the Taurian like personalities in the pop culture scene are bold and brash. I think it's underrated what a diva the Taurian archetype can be. And I think that it is because they have this Venus quality about them that's all about pleasure, but a taste for the finer things is also, I think, something you can associate with Taurus as well. In the chat while we were building the house, actually, I thought Modelin brought up a really, really good point that Tauruses are particularly gifted at curating. And I actually agreed with that very strongly. I think that was a perfect way to put it. Tauruses have an association with materialism and building foundations. They are the sister sign to Scorpio. Scorpio is very like symbolized with like rebirth, you know, just like destruction to be renewed, constantly changing and evolving. Well, when you think of the opposite of that with the sister sign of Taurus, you think of being rooted in the earth, you know, unchanging, unwilling to change.
Just, I need to walk away. Okay.
Honestly, kind of like sticking to what is tried and true, following in the steps of the ancestors, you know, that kind of thing. Much more with the familiar, not looking to be innovative. And of course, as always, not all Taurus is, but that's kind of what I believe the archetype of Taurus lends itself to. So all of that to say, I was thinking of all of these things while we were coming up with the overall look of the Taurus house. I was kind of challenged to utilize things that I don't typically do in the builds at this point, like a big open concept room that had the kitchen and the dining room and the living room all in it, but being kind of an open concept. But I also found that a lot of the choices I ended up making for the Taurus house kind of echoed a lot of what we had going on in the Cancer build. The Cancer house build, that is. And I think that that actually made a lot of sense. We talked about that a little bit on the chat in the stream as well, is that if there were a sign to have a house similar to what the Taurus vibed house would be, Cancer makes sense to me, because Cancer is kind of the other reliable, kind of family-oriented, like foundational sort of sign that kind of builds a nest and is more of a homebody. I think that like the pairing of Cancer and Taurus is a beautiful, like archetypical mother and father, with Cancer being mother and Taurus being father kind of energy. So ultimately, I thought that that did make sense. Another thing that I thought was very funny, but also paid homage a little bit to the archetype of Taurus, is we decided after I built the whole shell of the exterior of the house, at first I was sort of like, oh, what are we just gonna like, what would I do with auto roof? What would auto roof do? It did a perfectly fine job of making a roof for the house. And I think ultimately it was the practicality of it all and the ease of it all that we ultimately decided was like, this is what a Taurus would do anyway. I think it would be very Taurian to just choose the auto roof because it gets the job done, it looks pretty good, it's more practical this way, and it's less work. Another fun challenge I ended up having with the house was I was rightfully called out about how I like dark wood a whole lot. And I wanted a lot of natural sunlight to be coming into this little farmhouse, and unfortunately I just immediately darkened it up with my usual dark wood on everything. So I actually took the challenge of using lighter wood on the upstairs. You'll see it a little bit later after Space Lemons bullies me about the stairs and we change the stairs. But I think that that ends up being a very fun aspect of the house that's very different from how I typically build color-wise. After discussing it a little with the chat, but also thinking about it, we decided ultimately that the Taurus house would have these kind of like neutral almost colors as a background, like wood grain, maybe like a sage green, very pale colors, kind of beigey, and then to dress up that sort of like traditional classical timeless foundation with decorations, because I really felt like that was a great combination of the usual archetype of Taurus, but also the kind of glamour and extra little rhinestones that Raspberry brings to Taurus. And that's what's beautiful about astrology, is you might have this archetype of what your sign is, but you still bring a unique flavor of your sign to the table. So in Raspberry's case, I think that it was a lot of like country wood, but bringing in cozy, like lots of fun and cozy kind of eccentric accents. Like we've always talked about how Raspberry may have enjoyed going like thrifting or to an antique store with Marilena, and that's really the vibe I'm trying to go with here. We even talked about in the chat at one point that the headcanon for this house actually is that Raspberry and Marilena purchased an old farmhouse and made an extra renovation to it, adding the second floor. And I loved that headcanon. I think that is kind of the vibe that Raspberry and Marilena have, is like they wanted they want this old farmhouse, but they're jazzing it up with their own like modern aesthetics too, you know? They're very much the lesbian couple that played Stardew Valley and decided to buy a farm. There were a lot of cases where I really felt like I needed to go and shop for some custom content to really make this house what I wanted it to be. There is a lack, I feel like, of good sort of like ranch and farm vibed build items I was discovering as I was building. So I did try to, while we were in the stream, go shopping a little bit on Mod The Sims for some farm items that might jazz it up a little bit, but ultimately decided, because it was a lot of pressure to do that live, to go back in after we did the live and dress it up a little bit at the end with more custom content. So you guys will see at the very, very end some additional dressing that I will do that I was like, just didn't have the time or the bandwidth to do while we were live. So over here, I went ahead and built a little barn because I thought it'd be extremely cute to have like a detached barn kind of aspect to this build. The Sims 2 doesn't really have any livestock or like horses or anything like The Sims 3 has, but it still was very fun to build the little structure anyway. I don't think that Raspberry and Marilena would have ranch animals as much anyway. I think that they're truly here for the farm aesthetic. But I think that Raspberry does enjoy like raising plants and is going to do a good job raising plants for her grocery store, because for one, I think she would just want to do a good job being a Taurus, but also I think she would want to kind of like, she probably was born with a bit of an interest in growing things anyway, because of the way that her household was growing up, but also she was born a plant sim. So I think that there's a little bit of like, her heart probably calls towards, you know, nature in some way. Plus she's already hit perma platinum. So I'm kind of imagining this is the point in Raspberry's life where she's kind of settling down and she's like retiring from her education job, and she's going to open up her grocery store on her little farmhouse that she bought with her lesbian wife while she continues to have babies that she churns out and kicks out until we get a Leo. So one cool custom content that I did manage to download before it was too overwhelming was those corn stalks that you'll see in the center there. That should be harvestable corn that I got off of Mod The Sims, and I'm excited to see how it plays. But also, quick shout out to Hard Edge Pond. I did build another pond, and this time we put a fountain in the center of it, which we felt was very Rhinestone Cowgirl. One thing I'm still unsure about is you can just fully see the hell of a hacienda next door from our farm, and I kind of want to put something up for privacy between us. Haven't decided yet, just because I feel like I want to be able to come out to this area at the pond and the barn and not just immediately see the hell of a hacienda. That just seems like it would kind of harsh your vibe a little bit. We're moving into the inside was difficult, mostly because these farmhouse style builds, now this is one of the more realistic builds I feel like that I've needed to try and pull off during the Astrolegacy challenge. This, like the Cancer house, I wanted to look like an actual house, more so than the larger than life kind of houses that I've built for some of the other signs. Partially because I do think that there is this association with Taurus with like kind of being more conservative, being more traditional. They are associated with the Hierophant tarot card too, if that tells you anything about how they would kind of want to seem a little more, I don't want to necessarily say like normal or basic, but kind of just like classic, timeless. Not trying to like make a move or make a statement with their build, you know? But I struggled a lot with this because I am more used to a high fantasy kind of build or like kind of something wacky. So, I mean, I am a Pisces. So it does take me a little while, and I do rearrange the interior, especially of this room, quite a bit before we finally settle on what the layout is. But we talked about the idea of the kitchen having an island. The island felt very cozy to me, and it took me a while to get to a point where I wanted the sink in the island real bad. But ultimately, I think I do end up changing that. But check this out. We did get it functional, which was pretty cool. This was the point in the stream where Space Lemons and the rest of the chat bullied me about the stairs. So I turned them into a segmented spiral stairs, similar to the stairs that we used in the Cancer house. In the end, I actually liked this a lot more for the flow of the house overall. I'm a sucker for that split level landing on the stairs, and also Space Lemons bullied me about the railing that didn't match the stair rails because a matching one didn't exist. But I actually like how it came out because it has that opulent feel with the marble and the gold, and also the mismatched yet harmonious colors that I think still overall vibe with the space, despite not matching exactly. I was very excited to get the TV to fit in the little space by the stairs, but full disclosure, I did go back at the end and completely overhauled this room entirely, but you'll agree for the better, I think. Raspberry's master bedroom and bathroom upstairs came together for me very slowly over time. It kind of evolves and changes throughout the build until the end, but I think ultimately captures the spirit of her original bedroom we based most of the house's interior design on. We also decided on a bathroom tile that we all agreed slept, though that's another one of those things I came back later and discovered after bopping around a bit elsewhere. As I take a look back on the house build in the speed build footage, I am feeling like there's just too much blue still. I know we were going for like red and blue themes on Raspberry's house, but I do think that I might want to go back in even later than this speed build and see if I can find a more purpley version of that blue wall that's like in her bedroom and down in the living room. I just think purple might be the way to go for her. But for now, I think it works pretty well. I tried to go with a lot of like still antique looking furniture that was kind of mishmashed together in a very cozy way. Ultimately going for like cozy vintage vibes, but also like utilizing a lot of antique and classic and timeless elements to do so. And even though I wanted pops of color, I still wanted it to be kind of muted and pale in that Taurian Venus kind of inspired way. I think I started kind of losing focus in the plot by this point in the stream. Lots of stuff happening in the chat, Mr. Roboto being a criminal. We were about like 5 hours in, so I went a little wacky with the nursery for the babies. We agreed we needed to invoke Leo with the decoration, so I opted for loud, bright colors and a flames accent wall. And you'll see by the end I found some additional lion-themed items that I think will really help our luck, bringing in the Leo air. Round 2 of working on Raspberry's room, and I do want to shout out Mr. Roboto for reminding me of that amazing grapes pattern carpet tile for the rugs that we used around the house. I think it's such a perfect rug to both represent Raspberry and also kind of tie back into that naturey, harvesty theme of Taurus that we're going for. It was also at this point in building I became very desperate for decor items I didn't feel like we've already used a million times. Thankfully, I did eventually polish it to a point where I felt satisfied, like I wasn't rehashing old decorations I've already done or reheating the previous generation's nachos, as they say. This is also where we found that awesome tile that we all loved for the master bathroom. The whole master suite really underwent a lot of overall color and vibe changes, but I am happy with where we landed on pretty much all of the spaces in this build. This was about the point in the stream where I was getting very tired, but we did establish a pretty cute looking salmon and blue vibe for the guest/children's upstairs bathroom. We did agree that any child that isn't the Leo heir is just a guest in this house anyway. We currently have 2 toddlers and 2 children, none of which are useful heirs. They're all spares. I did kind of try to get them taken away last episode. We're still figuring out what we're going to do with them. But for the kids' rooms, we have 2 little girls, Sprite and Moss, I think. But it's a play into the Venus themes. I gave them the shell beds and just try to give them kind of like a fun little girls' room. Nothing too personal because I am just finding myself not giving a shit about any of the spares. We're so late in the challenge that it's just kind of like, if you aren't the sign I'm looking for, get out of my face. But I did also take this as another opportunity for Marilena to push her Christmas agenda on her children. So I feel like these kids truly think that Christmas decorations are just decorations, but the way that Marilena chooses to decorate their home. I finished out the live portion of the build by adding some finishing touches to the upstairs landing area. Space Lemons made sure to bully me one last time by letting me know that the shelving wasn't fully against the wall, thus making the door off-center, in an effort to make sure I'm constantly vigilant. I said goodbye to the steamed hams for the day and came back with fresh eyes the next day to finish the build. And as always, I would really recommend this in any creative project, as when I came back, I was so pleased with where we left off, but also so inspired to continue refining it. One of the first things I did was really beef up all of the vegetation around the house and pump up the flowers quite a bit around the lot as well. I've definitely learned that dressing up the landscaping in the lots with vegetation and trees and layering the shrubs and the flowers and stuff like this is one of my favorite parts of the overall build process. One of the CCs that I got included these flowers out front that don't have the little squares of grass growth underneath them. They're like isolated little patches of flowers, and I loved using them for the layering on the landscape in the yard. Another part of what I believe ultimately becomes the MVP of the whole build was this extra grass growth that I scattered all over the lot. I found it added a perfect texture for the landscaping and also really sold the rural and cottagey vibe we were going for. It reminds me a lot of like just country areas that I've seen growing up with the overgrown grass. It's the exact kind of grass that my mom would tell me not to go into because there might be snakes in that grass. I hung a Christmas wreath on the front door because that's yet another thing that I think Marilena would really want, because despite her punk sensibilities and rebelliousness against her small town upbringing, she is obsessed with the holidays. I also added an extra section of gardening plots and growth at the back of the lot to fill up the space a little bit more, but this is also when I finally remembered to look in Raspberry's inventory, which was full of everything I packed up from the old house. So I also spent some time putting some of those items out before completely and totally overhauling the inside of the house again to make that living room area a little more open. To make the space work and truly be an open concept living room, dining room, kitchen like I envisioned, I decided to totally change the overall layout of the room, including the location of the back door and the door to the little bathroom, and completely change the areas for the kitchen, dining, and living spaces. It was all wrong. I also decided to lighten up the colors as much as I could without sacrificing the red darker wood, only because I thought the red dark wood was so cohesive between the doors, windows, trims, and panels of the wallpapers down there that I didn't want to have to completely change those aspects of the rooms. It took a lot of trial and error, and some things I really didn't want to sacrifice, including the amount of windows, their placement, the style of the couch, and where the bathroom and stairs were. But it was a very satisfying puzzle to solve. I also put some string lights up in the kitchen, you'll see in a second. They're red and green, and I thought that worked because it was both something that Marilena might like as a Christmas detail, but I also liked to think that maybe they were those little jalapeno Christmas lights that look like little jalapeno peppers. I also went back and reworked the front room a little bit as I felt it was currently being underutilized. I figured I could turn the front area into the cozy reading nook that we initially envisioned on the live stream that had traits of a sunroom and office. This is where I ultimately put our bookcases and desk computer setup alongside a cozy little sitting area to read or look out at the yard. The witchy items we collected from the last generation also added a supernatural feel to the front room that I didn't mind too much. I also loved putting a lot of the statues from the old house out in the fields surrounded by the flowers. Having the beautiful statues out there in nature felt super Taurian to me. My last moments of decorating included folding in the rest of the generational treasures the household has kept into the overall build of the house. The wraparound porch becomes a fun place to have the good and bad witch thrones to sit and look out at the yard in, and a lot of the hobby items fit around the yard and porch as well. Anything that didn't fit, I actually just opted to keep in Raspberry's inventory for now to just pass on to our heir when they finally come. The last thing that I did ultimately was finish up the Leo altar for the nursery. I chose a lot of intentionally scary things to put on the wall facing the babies, alongside the ruler of Leo, the sun. There's also a couple Santa statues in there because you know that Marilena had her hands in decorating a little bit in this space as well. I had thought I needed to use that scary, gigantic inflatable cat to invoke Leo, but found an even better option. I also chose to add in those dramatic theater masks because Leo's theater, etc., etc. I topped it all off with these giant golden lion statues I found, staring at the babies, hopefully willing them into being Leos for us. But other than that, that's about all I did with the Taurian house build. Let me know how I did, you guys. Do you think I managed to make that living room space open? Do you like the sort of farmhouse style we went with? Do you like the farm? Do you like the CC? I got a lot of really fun and cool CC items for this house. I will actually list them in the description for you, but here's a last look. Here, let me slow it down for you. But with that, this is where I'm going to leave you guys for this week. This felt like a nice little standalone episode. I hope that it's not too disappointing that it's shorter than a usual Astrolegacy episode. If you're looking for more to watch, there's tons of other games on the channel, or you can always watch the full live stream VOD of this experience. It's in 2 parts and it is on a playlist on my channel. But as you guys know, I will be back next Monday because we have new episodes of the Sims 2 Astrolegacy Challenge every Sim Monday. We also stream here on the last Saturday of every month at 2 p.m. Central. Check out the videos on the channel. Hit the like, subscribe, hit the bell, all those things, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.